Welcome, everybody, to Change Your Story, Change Your Life. I'm your host, Mitch Austin, and we have an exciting show lined up for you today. Not one guest, but two. So Change Your Story, Change Your Life was born out of a class called Rise and Speak. And I take people on a 7-week journey to do a look back at their lives and find the defining moments and the lesson or blessing associated with them, put together a message, and then speak that message in public. Have a 95% completion rate. And if this sounds like something you're interested in, we have a class, a virtual class coming up November 7th, and it's going to be from 6:30 to 8:30 Pacific Standard Time. So if you're interested in joining the class, I have a few more spots available. You can reach out to me via email, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Mitch at speakteachinspire.com, and let's get you in the class. It's a healing journey. We only take 9 people. It's very intimate, and it'll be one of the most memorable things that you'll ever do. So I hope that you can join us. So I'm so excited to share with you my good friends and guests, Melanie Smith and Gary Michael Weinberg. I'm so excited you guys had time to be with us on the show today. And I'm going to start off and tell you a little bit about Melanie Smith. So Melanie has been a stage director and choreographer in the equity, community, academic, and conservatory arenas for 4 decades. You started at 5. That's great.
I did? How did you know?
That's great. She's also a teacher at the American River College, where she teaches acting, theater history, stage movement, and her acting credits include the premiere of the Vagina Monologues in Sacramento. That was amazing. Also, she's worked on the Law and Order show alongside Kathleen. Is it Chalfant?
Chalfant, yes.
That was good. And she's also a freelance editor who helps people write books. I think you're working with 3 of my friends right now, and they're just loving working with you. Melanie holds a BA in Communication and Rhetoric from the University of Pittsburgh and has a master's in theater arts from Cal State Sacramento. To every project Melanie undertakes, she brings an eye of an artist and the soul of an activist who knows that the arts have the power to change the world for the better. Welcome, Melanie. So
thank you.
Here. And next we have Gary Michael Weinberg. Gary has been a performing artist, writer, and producer for 5 decades. Okay, you started in the womb. The singer, songwriter, and guitarist. He has played on the East and West Coast, as well as the South, and even England. Wow. Gary is a member of the Screen Actors Guild. Gary has performed on stage, in film, and on television. He's written 3 full-length musicals and several screenplays, including the award-winning TV pilot, The Asylum. Ooh, maybe we'll learn more about that. And he's also co-produced several feature films. Also, in 2013, Gary began as a project coordinator for the Center of Healthcare Policy and Research for UC Davis. He's currently a singer-songwriter in a band called The Bagmen, which performs all over the Sacramento region and other good places as well. So welcome, Gary and Melanie. So glad you're here with us today.
Glad to be here.
Our pleasure.
So where are you in the world and what are you up to these days?
Which one?
Gary, you can go first. And
Yeah,
then,
why don't you?
and then
Okay,
we'll switch
so
back and forth.
we're here in Sacramento, and where we are in Sacramento is, on the path,
Mhm,
and staying on the path.
mhm.
That's ephemeral as opposed to specific, but every day is you wake up and we I think, and I don't want to. I never try. I try never to speak for Melanie because she's quite capable of doing that herself. And when I do try to, and when I do actually speak for her, I get a little smack across the face and say, "I can handle that, Gary. That's okay," which I deserve. Um,
Well, and people should know you're married.
yes,
So she isn't just
yes,
smacking some random person or her friend. She's smacking her husband, which is quite all right.
yeah.
It's a
Listen,
love smack. It's a smack
It's a
of
love
love.
smack. It's a love smack.
I am quite lovingly abusable. So yeah, we're here, and we're actually in the Midtown Curtis Park area,
Fabulous.
and we've been. This is our second tour of duty in Sacramento.
Oh,
We lived in Sacramento back in the late '80s until about 1998, and then spent 12 years in Los Angeles.
wow.
Came back to Sacramento about 10 years ago. Mel, does that make sense?
I think that's almost, yeah, about 10, right.
And we met in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania,
Hey, awesome. Awesome.
at a Halloween party in 1980.
Ooh. What were you wearing?
I had a Ronald Reagan mask, and I was actually dressed as the presidential curse.
Oh, what were you wearing, Melanie?
Well, I'm going to say Gary would put it in other language, but I'm going to say that I was dressed as a French courtesan. I was in the theater arts department at the University of Pittsburgh, and a lot of us students, we knew how to get into the costume shop when the hours were closed, when the shop was closed, and take costumes for Halloween. So I just had this beautiful black hat and this kind of a net and satin dress. And let's say just that Gary was charmed.
Completely. That was the first bit of charm. The second bit of charm was that smile that you see.
Ah,
I call that her heroine smile.
because
I
you're
actually wrote a song about it.
Ooh, is it part of the Bagman repertoire? Or
It is. Yes, it is.
Ooh,
Yes,
okay.
it is.
Well, we'll talk more about that. So, Melanie, what are you up to in the world these days?
Well, these days here in Sacramento, I am an acting teacher. I have private students and I have small group acting classes. And I am also a book editor. I help people write books, as you said. And, it's funny because the first time that I was asked to help somebody with a book, I was in a Science of Mind class and we had to write a paper. And meaning in our New Thought Science of Mind church or spiritual center that we were attending. And I wrote a paper and a woman in the class said, "Hey, you can write. Would you help me write a book? I have a great idea." And I said, "Okay." But she was my first client. That was about 16 years ago. And I helped her write a novel. So ever since then, I have been helping I've had about almost 20 clients in that time, 2 for fiction, numerous memoir, 2 children's stories, several self-actualization or self-help books. And it's funny because when my friend said, "Would you help me write the book?" I actually went home and Googled it. What do you call people who help people write books?
Write books.
And nothing came up. And it's still funny that in our vernacular, we still don't have a term for it. Because when you say book editor, I think most people's minds go to copy editing, proofreading.
Yeah.
And it's really, I think I should start calling me and all of us who do this book developers. Because we really help people develop, or I help people, I say from first idea through final proofread. I am not a publisher. So I don't, I'm not an expert on submissions to traditional publishing places, nor do I self-publish. But from that germ of an idea, or sometimes a first draft manuscript, all the way to a polished book is what I do.
Well, and Melanie, I just want to say, because I met with you and I'm still intending to work with you on my book, but I feel like you're like a book coach, you're a book angel, you're a book technician, you're a book, I'll hold your hand, it's going to be okay. Like, because it's scary, right? It's a big endeavor. And I just want to say that you're brilliant at it. And if anyone who's watching, if you have an idea, just reach out to Melanie. She'll meet with you. She'll talk with you and see if it's a good fit or not. So speaking of books, if your life were a book, what would the title be?
Can I go first?
Sure.
Okay. So I am going to have to just back up for a sentence and just explain what inspired the title of my book. So I've been an acting teacher for a long time. As you said, Mitch, I have a master's in theater arts, and the textbook that I love the most is called Respect for Acting by wonderful acting instructor and actress Uta Hagen, who passed away not that long ago. And she quoted the guru of realistic acting in the Western world, named Konstantin Stanislavski, who said, love the art in yourself, not yourself in the art.
Ooh, I love that quote.
Exactly. Meaning what the part of you that is driven to create, the part of you that is an artist in whatever you do, nurture that. Uta Hagen reminds us that the word amateur in today's conversation is like, oh, you're an amateur, you're not a professional, you just don't really know what you do. But the word has its basis in the French for love. Wow. So the word in its original iteration meant someone who does something for the love of it. So we need to nurture the love in ourselves and don't go into it just for just ego or worrying, like self-conscious. How do I look in the art? Follow the love in yourself in the art. And that's the way to step into creation. So the name of my book would be The Art in Yourself.
Oh my gosh. I love that title. And I love the explanation, because there's so much fear around creating, so much self-judgment, so much, and that just diffuses it in such a powerful way. Oh, I love the title of that book. And it seems like that's what you've been doing for a lifetime now, with all of the things that you've created and taught and participated in. I just so inspired by you.
Thank you.
And Gary, what would be the title of your book?
So I have found that when I have taken a chance, taken a risk in my life, I've usually been rewarded. I can't say every single time, but way more often than not, when I was willing to put myself in what might have seemed initially to be a little bit of an uncomfortable situation, I've generally done pretty good. So I would say Take a Risk would be the title of my book.
Oh, wow.
And then I would take it to Melanie and have her edit the title a little better than that.
Just the title, right? Nothing else.
Well, oh no, believe me. That's just the start. I think I don't consider myself great at titles. So I always ask Melanie, what do you think of that? And she'll usually have a better or something. She'll have at least an alternative option that I hadn't considered. And
well, titles, log lines, and mission statements, I'm your gal, okay? But I just want to say that with Gary and I, Mitch, we're both writers, and it's such a blessing because we're a pair of eyes for each other's writing. Everything we write, we're able to hand off, whether it's a scene from a play or a press release or a bio, or we hand them to each other, and it's great.
Well, and I love that you are a team. Right, you're such a dynamic team, and that you're there for each other, and that you're both writers, so you understand the struggle. And I think if my perception is people who want to start out and write a book don't always understand some of the struggle and resistance and internal turmoil, or how to get past, that inner kind of resistance. What would you offer somebody who's wanting to go down the path of writing, but feeling that sense of resistance or procrastination or I'm not enough? What would you offer them?
Well, that is, you just hit the nail on the head. The majority of the almost 20 clients, and I'm just going to be a tad smug here, because you're 95% success rate for your Rise and Speak. That's so enviable. But I will say that there's only one author who I've worked with who hasn't completed their book. Now, I am working with 3 authors, as you said, so they are in the stages of development. But I have faith. I know that they will complete also. But what you said about people having resistance to share their story, and again, this crosses over with what you do. It's the same, exactly the same. It's almost like you have it in a condensed micro version of getting up and speaking it. I've got just a longer version, so maybe it's more diffuse. Nobody wants to see my story in print. I mean, that people don't say that to me right away, but that's what they're feeling. And the way that it manifests for me is an author will say, the potential author will say, oh, I really want to share with the world what they need to do if they're struggling with bipolar disorder, or if they have had to make a huge life transition. I want to tell readers that they can do A, B, C, D. And then I say, okay, what inspired this? Well, I don't want to talk about that.
Oh.
And I say, well, okay, there are lots of books. They can go to a therapist for bipolar medications. They can. What's your story about it?
Yes.
So I think if I do my best to give people the confidence to know that, number one, stories are the way that we learn. We never exhaust our craving for stories. From the first time the cave person scratched on the wall a story, we still learn from stories. When reality shows came out, Gary and I and a lot of other people said, that's never going to last. Thank goodness. Guess what? They're still here, and they're still here in spades, because people love to see and read people's stories. So first I try to imbue with the author that how important story is, and also memoirs in particular, which is what I'm nudging them towards. Memoirs have been popular since Ulysses S. Grant.
Oh, yeah. Okay? Wow. Yeah.
And they show no sign of flagging. And then I tell them that their story is unique. There's only one of their stories. And when you share the story of you, that's when people will understand what they need to do to help themselves. So I spend so much of my time saying, give me more. It's okay. Give me more. I love that. Give me more. I want to hear more. And that's how it develops.
Yeah, step into that permission to talk about yourself, because that can be hard. People think, well, I'm imposing, or who wants to hear. But I love how you just reaffirmed the importance of our stories and how that inspires and teaches us. And that's really why I do this show. So it's a perfect alignment there.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of our own personal story. And some people want to write fiction. Like Gary, you've done several screenplays and different creative works.
Yes.
Was there any, internal struggle, or gee, people aren't going to like this, or?
Oh God, where do I start? So generally when I have worked on a screenplay that was not about my own story, it was a work for hire. And so that said, we had to, and I, Melanie and I were actually with a third party, a wonderful writer named Todd Brown, is also a musician and a songwriter. We worked on a film called Magical Planet.
Oh,
is that right?
Yeah.
And you know, that was not our initial idea. Although I will credit Melanie for actually inventing the way to tell that story, and there was, so I'll back it up a little further. We were brought with an idea was brought to us about creating a story sequel to the film The Secret. If you remember The Secret.
Oh, The Secret. I remember that. Yeah.
So one of the producers of that film initially was looking for a sequel, but they wanted something different that was going to be more fictive. And correct me if you disagree with any of this, Mel.
No, that's right.
Well, hold on a second. So people actually came to you because they wanted a sequel to The Secret. Is that correct?
Not a sequel. They wanted a fiction. They wanted a story that would illustrate the same principles.
That would illustrate the principles in The Secret.
Right.
Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a 2-minute break, but I don't want anyone to go away. This is getting really good. I can't wait to hear this. Don't go away. We're going to talk about what they came up with for the fictional illustrative. Was it a movie, a film, a show?
It was a script for a movie.
A live action film.
A script for a movie. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. You don't want to go away. Stick around. We'll be right back.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Welcome back to Change Your Story, Change Your Life. I'm your host, Mitch Austin, and I'm here with not one guest, but two. You get two guests for one show. Melanie Smith and her husband, Gary Michael Weinberg. So grateful they're on the show with us today, and it's getting juicy. Everyone remembers The Secret, right? They were asked to come up with a script that would illustrate The Secret's principles in story format. So please take it away. Share with us how you approached that and where it went.
Well, so initially, Melanie took charge and wrote what we call a treatment. And if you don't know what a treatment is in Hollywood, it's kind of a couple of page. It could be a 1 page. It could be 10 pages that basically outlines with minimal detail, but with just a specific kind of the way the story is going to go, the arc of the story, if you will, what we want to tell and how we want to say it.
Right.
And the one of the producers of the show, who was probably at the forefront of it, actually so Melanie wrote a treatment. We all, I don't know how we came to that decision that Melanie was going to do it, but she had an idea.
Right.
And I think we had the title that somebody wanted.
The title was given to us.
Yes.
It was given to us.
And the title was Magical Planets. That's what they wanted to call it. So Melanie came up with a treatment for it. And the producer, one of the main producers, literally said to Melanie, this is, and apparently they'd been looking for something for a while. And they'd run through all kinds of stories, and I don't know how many dozens of things they'd come across their desk, and none of them really popped for them. Right. And I remember the email that Melanie showed me, and it was, I may not have the words exactly, but it was something like, this is the best treatment for a sequel, not exactly what we were doing, to The Secret that they had seen.
Wow.
And it was my first treatment. So I'm just going to go back to what we were just talking about. don't be afraid to give it a go. You know, I mean, I wasn't, Gary was the one who was involved in screenwriting. Gary's the one who studied it. Gary taught screenwriting in LA and here in Sacramento. I keep telling him he needs to teach it again. Well, actually, you would know that, Mitch.
Yes, I was your student, and it was brilliant. And I'm waiting for the next class.
That's right. That's right. So when I just went ahead and wrote the treatment, I was shocked when we were told that. And we actually had a reading, if I can pick up, Gare.
Yeah, go ahead.
We had a reading. So from that treatment, the people from Mickey Willis, who I think directed The Secret too, didn't he, Gare? Produced, directed. Anyway,
he produced it. I'm not sure he directed
involved, commissioned us. Some of the people involved, meaning they hired us to write the screenplay, which was wonderful. You're always looking for that in Los Angeles. Half the people are actors, the other half are screenwriters. So, you know, you're looking to get paid for it. So Gary and Todd Brown and I wrote a full-length screenplay. We had a wonderful reading of it, which was did Michael Beckwith come to the reading? He was at the reading, wasn't he?
I'm not 100% sure.
He was at the reading or one of our meetings, because that's right. I met him. I'd seen him at Agape Center, but he was there because he was connected in this process. So I am sorry to say that although we had a lot of attention and a lot of interest in it, it fell on the roadside like 99% of the film projects do. You know, I've often said so it never ended up getting produced. But I will say, I've said this to Gary so many times, because Gary wrote a teleplay called The Asylum that won a screenwriting competition, one of the bigger screenwriting competitions, and that got shopped around. We were called in for meeting after meeting for that. That didn't end up being produced either. But here's the thing. Think about it now. You turn on your television set. I never heard of that show. I never heard of that show. There's a million shows. When Gary and I were pitching our film deals, film and television projects in Los Angeles, ABC, NBC, CBS, HBO, and at that time, Showtime was the new kid on the block. That's all you had to pitch your stuff to. So getting a project in was a closed book with a lock on it, you know? And
what I like to call it, what I like to say about it is in Hollywood, yes means maybe, maybe means no, and no one will ever say no to you.
Wow, really?
What happens is if they decide they don't want to do it, they just stop calling. And they don't answer your calls anymore. And the reason is they may have decided that they want to pass on it. They may want to pass on it. But the reason they won't actually say that to you is because they don't know if they'll have to work with you again down the road, and they don't want you to hate them because you turned them down once.
Because it's a very relational industry. It's a very who you know, and you never know where that person's going to go and how that will affect your viability. It really seems like to me that you got to be highly resilient to be in this industry and be an artist. And what I love is, and maybe you can wind back the clock for the viewers, when did you guys decide? Because you've been in the industry one way or another basically your whole working life. Like sometimes people go, well, I guess the acting thing isn't working out. I'm going to go get a corporate job and give up. But I don't really sense that you did that. And so would really love to know, like, how did your career start? Did you commit all in? And just kind of take us back in time when you made those decisions, if you made them consciously or if you just kept moving towards your dream.
Is that okay if I go first?
Go for it, baby.
Okay. So I was 6 years old, and my mother took my twin sister. I'm an identical twin. And my mother took my twin sister and I to go see a musical review at our local high school. I had never seen a play. It was physical. I watched that review, and I was charged. I mean, I was charged. energy was just, I could have lit up. It's a wonder they didn't put a cover on me because I was lighting up the auditorium. I was just vibrating. I was in tears at the sad songs, at the ballads. And I begged my mother for days after that, take me back and see it again. Take me back and see it again. Oh, you've already seen it once. But I knew from that one night that that's the life I wanted to have. So fast forward to in second grade now, and we're reading fairy tales, and the teacher has each of us take a little paragraph. I got The Wicked Witch. I'd seen The Wizard of Oz. I knew how to do that. So when the kids were jumping out of their seats and screaming, and so I said, I can do that. So I knew at age 7 that I was going to be on stage. So I was in a lot of high school plays, and then after not being cast because the director thought I was too big for my britches, he ended up asking me to be student director for a play, and I was so hurt because I wanted to act, but that was where my directing career started, because that high school teacher ended up he spent almost the whole rehearsal period up in the light grid, and the students, actors were like running around. So I, in essence, directed that play. Then I said, I have another joy. So that's where I have spent most of my time as a stage director. Not as much choreography anymore as I've gotten a little older, but I feel like I have directed and choreographed musicals in 5 past lives. So I've spent a lot.
She is a brilliant, and I'm not saying, I mean, I love her, obviously, but I've got a pretty critical eye, and I'm not the only one who says this. She is a brilliant stage director, and there aren't that many of those.
Thank you.
I believe it. I know how you move.
And I know that because I've been in her plays. She's directed me more than a couple of times.
Right. But he's also been my musical director.
I've done that too.
So like you said before, we've collaborated an awful lot. But just the end of the story is I went on to college, and my parents would not pay for my college degree if I wanted to be a theater major. And that happens a lot. To high school students, So I have my bachelor's is in communication and rhetoric, but I took more theater credits than I did communication.
Worked it out, got creative, right, Melanie? Got creative.
And I went back in my mid-40s to get my master's in theater. So that's another thing that I want to share out there. It is never too late. It's never too late. Most master's programs have their classes at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. So if you have to get the kids out of the house or back from school, or you work at 9 to 5, you can make it. They accommodate you for classes. So go out and get the community college. I taught at community college for 10 years. Go back and get that education.
Yeah. So there's still always more to learn and grow into, clearly.
Amen on that, Mitch. There's always more to learn, and that's so important to remember.
Absolutely. Well, Gary, what's your story? How'd you get into this gig?
Well, I don't have the flash, of realization, like Constantine seeing the sword in the sky, like Melanie and so many other people I know do. For me, it's been very organic over time. I started out as a little kid. I remember I liked to draw, and I wanted to be I wanted to do one of two things. I either wanted to be a cartoonist or I wanted to be a lumberjack.
Wow.
I don't know where the lumberjack thing came from.
Big.
But the cartoonist thing, so I was drawing like all the time. And I would make little cartoon stories. I had a little character called Johnny Savaroni. I don't know where that came from. And I had a little comic book that I made, and everybody thought Gary was going to be a cartoonist. But they also called me the kid with 1,000 faces. I had my aunt next door. So because I was always I was a ham, and I was trying to maybe I was starved for attention. I had 2 older sisters, and they were always like really good in school, and I really didn't care about school. So just to try to make someone in my family notice me, I just was the clown. And but that's also me. I mean, I really like. I've got a pretty reasonably well developed ego, and I want to be the center of attention as much as possible, which is why I like to be in the middle here. This is great.
See, you're right in the center, Gary, right where you need to be.
And thank you. And I've kind of maybe it's also part of my ADD that I've organically or inorganically moved from one type of artistic expression to another over the years. I started off wanting to be an artist, a visual artist, and over time I kind of lost interest in that, and that was replaced by music, and that was around the age of 15. My parents made me take guitar lessons at 11, which of course failed because you can't make me do anything.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it. Only because you said I had to do it, and then I'm not going to do it. Right. And then at 15, I started hearing, music on the radio that I liked, and rock and roll started appearing, and I started smoking pot. What can I tell you? And I decided that I wanted to play guitar. I heard my first Neil Young song and said, "Well, that's what I want to do." And I said, I didn't say to my parents, "Please, pay for my classes." They said, "Well, we'll get you a guitar, a real one. You're going to take your own lessons if you want to do that." And
wow!
I found a teacher, and I studied with her for a year, and learned enough that I could, play some chords. And then I started realizing that not only did I want to just play, but I wanted to write. And I'm not sure where that came from, but I remember writing my first song because I was in love with a girl, and that probably had a lot to do with it.
Funny how many things start that way.
Oh boy, in rock and roll, probably all of them.
Probably.
And I wrote a love song, and I actually had a chance to perform it in high school.
Wow.
And that was the first time I was, I think, 16, and that was the first time I had really performed live in front of people. And but I also, and so then I did that for a while, and then I met Melanie Smith at the age of 22. And I had already apparently shown some signs of being enough of a ham that I might be good as an actor. And so she got me in a play.
Hey.
And my first line was, "I'll sleep with that girl if nobody else will."
Was it really?
Yes, actually.
Oh my gosh. Is that why you put him in the play, Melanie? I don't know.
Well, he only had a couple lines.
I only had the one line, so
it was safe.
It's kind of hard to screw that up.
Couldn't screw it up. Smart, Melanie, smart.
and then Melanie literally started casting me in some things, and I started taking some classes from her. She taught a musical theater class that was really less about the music, although that was important, than it was about the acting. As an actor, she might not view it that way, but it was the turning point for me as a performer. I think I had some natural ability to connect to characters and parts. I remember once doing something before I ever met Melanie and ever took any classes, and all I remember was in my brain, I said, "Okay, here's my lines. What am I thinking? What's my character thinking when I say that line?"
Right.
And then later on, I learned techniques from Melanie about subtext and about what does your character want, and that goes back to it's one of Uta Hagen's, as Melanie mentioned earlier, the Uta Hagen books and her teachings. She co-created with her husband, whose name I don't remember, HB Studios in New York, which I think still exists.
Yes.
And so, I immersed myself in theater and acting, and that's what I wanted to do. That was the next thing I wanted to do. Eventually I ended up, becoming a member of the Screen Actors Guild in Los Angeles and producing some things. And I'm moving forward in time here. And over time, again, time conquers all. I ended up reconnecting to my musical interests of the past. I had in 1988, I think, we had already moved west, and I was working for the Bulova Watch Company factory.
Bulova. I remember Bulova.
Yes, a lot of people remember it. No one has one anymore.
No, probably not.
You might have an old one.
Right.
And I had a huge territory. I was the factory rep for Bulova. I literally covered all 11 Western states.
Yeah.
And I was up in Reno, and there was a pawn shop up there. And I walked into the pawn shop, and I saw a 1965 Martin D35 guitar that looked like it had been run over with a truck and survived. But I played it. It was beat up, but I played it, and it was the most beautiful sound of music I'd ever heard. And so for $900, I bought a guitar that had I bought it brand new, it would have cost me about $12,000.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
I got lucky, and it was a great instrument, and so that was my guitar for a long time.
And then it pulled you back into music.
And I played again for a while, and then I actually literally stuck it in the corner of a room by the time we moved to Los Angeles, because that was my goal, was to really just focus on acting and writing. And then one day I heard it crying in the corner.
Oh.
And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, baby. I gotta put my arms around you."
Oh.
And I picked it back up again, and I've been playing again ever since.
Awesome. I love it. So this is amazing. So we do have to do another break, but when we come back, I kind of want to dive into, like, did you ever think about giving up and just like doing the corporate thing, or how was it for you staying in the acting but getting turned down? Like, was there ever any doubt or any huge decisions where your story could have changed but didn't? So don't go away, anybody. We'll be right back with Gary and Melanie. Be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to Change Your Story, Change Your Life. I'm here with my guests, Melanie Smith and Gary Michael Weinberg, and it's getting juicy. Melanie just shared with us how she knew right at the first time she went to a play that she's all about acting. But Gary was more like the Mr. Magoo of acting and creativity, and just kind of fell into this and fell into that and fell back into this.
Yeah.
But they've been in the arts in so many different ways for an entire lifetime. And so the question that we kind of teed up before the break was there any moment where you thought, this isn't going anywhere? Maybe it was when the screenplay got shot down, or the pilot for the TV, and maybe I should just suit it up and go to corporate America, or just, get a real job. I'm sure you probably heard many times.
Oh, God.
Any moment there that happened along the journey?
Can I take this one first, Mel?
Sure.
So but the pilot that I wrote for a screenplay called for a television series was called The Asylum. That was based on a job that I had in Los Angeles about a boiler room. Do you know what I mean by boiler room?
Yeah, I think I do.
So a boiler, in this particular definition of boiler room, it's not the room downstairs that keeps the rest of the house heated.
Oh, okay.
Or the ship out at sea.
Yeah.
In this particular case, yeah. So a boiler room. There's a movie called I think it's called Boiler Room.
I think it is.
With Giovanni Ribisi and the
Vin
guy.
Diesel?
Vin Diesel, yes. So so basically it's a telephone sales room where they make calls and try to raise money over the phone. And so I worked for and actually Melanie did too. She wasn't on the phones like I was. She was in administration. But I was a phone salesman, a closer, as we say in the business. And I met some insane characters, the kind of people that would raise money on the phone with just making phone calls, but were so self-destructive that they nobody ever taxes weren't taken out. They just paid you 20% on the money that you raised in one lump sum, and then these guys would, the stereotype is, it's not that much of a stereotype. They'd take their cash, drive to Vegas, lose it all, and come back with a pair of socks. And that's about it. And not enough money. And the reason that they had to take a Greyhound bus home because they lost their car.
Wow.
On a spin of the wheel. So these are pretty crazy guys. And so I wrote a screenplay about that world. And obviously it did well enough to win the Scriptapalooza script writing contest, which ultimately led to us being brought in. I can't remember the name of the company, but it was a bunch of people got together, and they wanted to look for some content for a production company in the Midwest that was putting together like 20 shows for a cable deal there. At least that's the way it was presented to us. And that's my memory of it anyway. Melanie might have a slightly different memory.
No,
but
that's
there were a bunch of producers and people and I mean people that you would know. So this group that started this went out and found people who had projects that they were pitching all over the place. And there were a couple of pretty well-known people who were brought in as potential, who had projects that they wanted to try to get produced. One of them was Helmsley.
Sherm
Hemsley.
Oh yeah.
What was the show? Moving on up to the east side.
Moving on up to the east.
He had a show, and there were a number of other people, and so they really liked the script to the Asylum, and we were told that the show was greenlit. Of course, what we didn't know at the time is they didn't really have any money. They were raising money. They thought they had some possible ways of producing all of these, but we'd have these big meetings, and there'd be 11, 12 producers in the same room, and but they kept telling us how great our show was.
And let me just jump in. They had enough money to tempt us all. Because they had us ensconced in our administrative offices in the Raleigh studios, which is the place to have your administrative offices. That's where a lot of the leading movies and television shows have their offices. And so we were staffed in Raleigh studios. Yeah. So we thought that there was money, but like Gary said, they were raising the money and they didn't have enough of it. So everything just.
Well, so to piggyback on that, we actually, we had a heck of a staff. We had a bunch of people who were part of the production staff for It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. They liked what we had. They liked the way everything was being pitched.
Right.
They believed in the project. They believed in the producers, and so we had them. We had a guy who had done production design for I think it was Mad Men.
Oh my God, I love that show. So you must have thought you're on your way.
Oh, we thought literally. I've got a song where one of my lines is now I can't remember the line.
We thought we struck it rich.
We thought we struck it rich until we got struck dumb.
Yeah.
Right. So all your hopes and dreams, all your hard work, all of
Yeah.
your visioning, all of your
We thought we had made it. And pretty quickly, we found out we didn't. And what happened was we learned that almost a day, within a day or two of being told that everything was great and it was all going to happen. Within a day or two, we realized that they had just enough money to set us up in Raleigh studios for about 10 days. And then the money was gone and we were all kind of booted out.
So in the meantime, we had been asked to do location scouting, preliminary casting. Gary had to write what they call the Bible, a 5-year projection for his show. So endless production meetings. So we let all of our other jobs fall by the wayside. So we were broke in LA. Broke.
And that was a 6-month process. So we kind of let things go, and because this was going to work. I mean, we drank the Kool-Aid. We believed.
We even hired the caterers, Mitch.
Right.
For our shoots.
You were all in, like all your reserves,
we were all ready to go. And a good friend let us squeeze into her house in Van Nuys, and that's how we weren't homeless.
Oh my God, how devastating.
And I'll never forget the two of us looking at each other when we finally had the last conversation that we had on the phone with one of the initial producers who really never told us that it wasn't going to happen.
No.
We kept getting strung along because he didn't want to lose it.
Fell away.
I think he really
fell away.
But then we looked at each other and said, can we continue to do this? Can we survive? And we at that point, I think was pretty much the moment that we made the decision that Los Angeles decided it didn't want to work with us anymore. And fortunately for us, Melanie had a dear friend, and still has, who was able to give us a way to get out and get back up to Sacramento and get started again. And it was a struggle.
Yeah, and she actually hired me to write a life story for her wife's parents.
Wow.
So again, like the book editing, book developing popped in. To help me. And that gave us just enough cash to get back up here. And she helped us out in finding an apartment and stuff like that. So, but Mitch, if I can I answer the basic question?
Yeah.
9 to 5, I've done it a number of times, but only very sporadically. And as a teacher, and I actually taught through the 90s in American River College. I'm not there now. I go back in sometimes if they want me to help coach students for an event. But while if you've heard the term freeway flyers, we would call each other, meaning adjunct faculty. At community college, the part-time or adjunct faculty was 75%. So that means they kept you just under the 3 classes that you would need to healthcare.
Yeah.
And, just under, like you couldn't really make a living. So we all had to get 1 or 2 or 3 other jobs. So we were flying from place to place. Wow. Thus that. But, even with that, I've waited tables 4 times. I've done retail 4 times, all of that stuff. Even with all of that, I knew I was never going to give up on the arts. It was temporary. That was always temporary.
Yeah. Wow. And I would add that for me, that might have been the moment when I decided that that making it in Hollywood, as they say in Los Angeles, the only reason people don't make it is because they give up.
Yeah. So did you have to give up that dream then of making it in Hollywood?
Can I?
But I'll turn it. Let me just say one thing. So I turned it from the film industry back into music. That's kind of what hit my heart. That was my way back into continuing to be able to express my art, and that's what I've been following ever since.
Beautiful.
Well, I do just do a quick closing the loop on the film world.
Oh, yes.
So after all of that, feeling like we were beat up, we arrive in Sacramento. I already scoped out the Center for Spiritual Awareness because I knew we would need that to help us as a safe resting place when we got here. We got here, we became active in that spiritual community. We met a man named John Donovan, who brilliant teacher who worked in the two jails, the two prisons / jails in the county of Sacramento, and thought that he was just marvelous. We ended up being asked by John, told us that a producer, and we're talking a producer that has worked, he's had a lot of national films distributed, all
Broadway
of that stuff.
too.
Broadway too. So he wanted to produce a movie about John and John's work in the prisons.
I remember that.
So John asked Gary and I to produce and direct it for him. So what do you know it, Mitch? We come back with our tails between our legs. We're beaten up and we're bruised. Within a year, somebody writes us a check for $10,000 to do a short documentary.
Woohoo!
So there's the last ha-ha with that.
Yeah.
You know, so we haven't pursued it again, but I feel like that was a nice kind of a, closing of the loop there. You never know. You never know.
No.
You never. What looks like a dead end sometimes is just a doorway to something new you didn't know exists. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, we know the power of story, and that we think in stories, we live in stories, we move in stories. So here's our signature question. Somebody comes to you and they're writing the book of life and they want a story from your life to inspire and support future generations. What story would you pick and why?
Can I go first? And then you will put the capper on it, because I'm sure you will. So I go back to my book title, which is Take a Risk. And I think this was before we moved to LA, but I was just kind of starting to feel my oats as an actor on stage in Sacramento even, but I had never done Shakespeare, and I love reading Shakespeare, but I had never really seen a production that made my heart go, oh my God, yes.
Right.
I mean, I was in England. I mentioned when I was playing, this is before we moved out here, and I saw a production at the Royal Shakespeare Company in Cambridge of Midsummer Night's Dream, and I went, oh my God, that's what Shakespeare can look like.
Right.
So that kindled that initial love for seeing it, well done, and then I'd done a production at Garbo's Dinner Theater here in Sacramento of Oklahoma, and a director and teacher named Jack Lynn saw me in that, and he asked me to audition for a production of Macbeth,
right,
out at the Woodland Opera House that he was.
I know Woodland,
that he was doing, and I had never done Shakespeare as an actor. I had never done it. I mean, I'd done it in some classes with Melanie. But really, I really had no acting experience in Shakespeare. But Jack asked me to audition, and I said, okay, and I auditioned. But so then I decided, well, what part do I want in that? There's a lot of parts. And I decided for my first opportunity at Shakespeare that I wanted the lead. That's, again, Gary's ego.
Right.
And I felt like I could do it.
Right.
And even though I had absolutely zero acting experience in this like incredible language, with Shakespeare, so so he said, "Well, what part are you auditioning for today?" And I said, "Well, I'm auditioning for Macbeth," and I did a monologue, and I had no idea. And he said, "Well, thank you very much." I did the monologue, and he said, "Thank you very much," and that was it. And it was about a week or so later that I got a call from his stage manager saying, I have gotten the lead in Macbeth. Yeah. And I'll never forget Melanie. Oh, and by the way, so do you want to tell the part?
Yeah, and we have 1 more minute left in the show. Sorry.
So is that all, Gary? Do you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, so I'll just wrap it up and say, Melanie said, well, Gary, why don't you try for like Banquo or or Macduff or one of the smaller parts. They'd be great. You could handle them. And I said, no, I want to do the lead. And I got the part. And so that was something. So for me, whatever you want, just go do it. Try it. Put yourself out there if that's what you want.
And I keep hearing that as a theme from this particular interview. And I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I feel like we need a part 2. You need to come back. I just feel like you both need to come back.
Mel, I'm sorry I stole your thunder, Mel. You didn't get
I'm
your
so
story.
Sorry. I do want to thank New Thought Media Network. Please donate so that we can have these shows continue. And I want to thank 18 Source Productions for this beautiful studio. And in the meantime, make sure to join us next week. Our guest was at the Pentagon at 9/11. Next week, you want to be there. So in the meantime, go out there, share your story, share your light. Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching.